Hello. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie. I'm on the board here at MassAccess. Welcome. Thank you all for coming to our conference today. It's so nice to see so many of you back in person again. We have Jill with us today to present her new way of work presentation. Jill is a nationally certified senior professional of human resources and also a senior credentialed professional, the top designation offered by the premier industry organization, the Society for HR Management. As a longtime SHRM member, Jill completes over 40 hours per year of continuing education through seminars, workshops, and relationships with benefits, payroll, and legal providers. So, as we all know, working from home has changed dynamically during the pandemic, and Jill is here to guide you through the pitfalls, the challenges, and the actual history of working from home. Jill will help you navigate expectations, efficiency, and productivity, whether you're in person, hybrid, or fully remote. So please welcome Jill.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Great. I know I'm the only thing between you and lunch, so I'll try to keep it entertaining. Welcome to the Spring Conference. The spring's doing a lot of heavy lifting. It's already going to be like 90 degrees today, so let's all keep cool and enjoy some education. As Katie said, I am Jill Santopietro Panel. Those are lots of crazy last names. I like to collect them. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the new world of work. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves briefly just so I get a lay of the land of who's here. We're going to talk about working from home, hybrid work, managing those teams, and just any other way we're doing our work, because I don't know what we're all doing. We're all doing a lot of crazy things to get it done. So I've been in HR for 24 years. I started out in a large corporate, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 employees, in huge HR teams. And then 7 years ago, I stepped out and I now work for myself. I'm a consultant. I work with small businesses, nonprofits, and startups that don't have their own full-time HR, which is all of them, it turns out. So my job is to make sure you don't go to jail. There's not a lot of jail in HR, but there's like a little jail. So we try to keep you out of that part. The rest of it's all fines and money out of your pockets that you don't want. And I really, I love working. I work with several stations in Massachusetts, and that's how I ended up getting involved in this group. I came and spoke a few years ago. I think it was 2017. I spoke about the different generations in the workplace. If any of you were there, that was a lot of fun. And I'm going to mention that a little bit today, because that definitely comes into how we work and why we work. I've been working from home for myself for 10 years as corporate and 7 years as a consultant. So I have a lot of thoughts about this, more than we can fit into an hour. So if anyone has questions afterwards, I am not a very formal person. Please get up if you need to, raise your hand. I will talk at you if you don't raise your hand. So I will try not to do that. I'll try to make sure I engage you all, but I'm just wanting to make sure everybody is aware that, I'm not a super formal person. So you're like, hey, yo, whatever you want to say, you're welcome to talk. If you can just go around quickly and tell me where you're from and what you do there, that would be super, just so I have a sense of who I have here today. Do you want to pass?
Sure. Hi, I'm Helen Chattel, and I'm the Executive Director for Watertown Cable Access.
Hi, my name is Barbara Chisholm, and I'm the Executive Director at WACA TV in Ashland.
I'm Jerry. I'm the Director of Editing at Milton Access Television.
Hello, I'm John Grabowski. I'm the Executive Director of Marshfield Community Media.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm Production Tech at Drake at Access Television.
And I am Nathan. I am also production tech at Drake Access Television.
Hi, I'm Jen Pula. I'm the administrator at Bedford TV.
Hello, I'm Jennifer McGrail. I am the Director of Operations at Bourne Community Television.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Glenn Williams. I'm the General Manager of Boston Neighborhood Network.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Boyd. I'm the Executive Director of Wakefield Community Access Television.
I'm James, and I'm the Executive Director in Wellesley.
I'm Amy Palmerino, and I'm the Executive Director of Stoneham TV.
Sarah Fletcher at Westford CAT.
Hi, Hi, I'm Kim Murphy, Executive Director at Taunton Community Access.
Hi, I'm Karen Sennett. I am a staff member in Billerica, Massachusetts.
2 more. We're almost done.
Good morning, Nathan Glennie, Executive Director at Fitchburg Access Television.
Hi, I'm Christina Tasheva. I'm the Station Operations Manager at Harvard Cable TV.
That really helps know a lot of executive directors, a lot of people that are leading parts of the organization. So you're going to want to think about how we're working. You all have staff, I'm assuming, in some way, shape, or form, whether you have a small handful or a lot. People, as soon as you have people, you get to have people problems. Yay for you. So my job here is to help you figure it out. So the traditional work model that a lot of us grew up with, very much people expected you to sit there for 40 years, you get a goal watch, you go home, right? That's how that used to work. Everyone's under the same roof. We didn't change very quickly. Changes took a long time. Attendance was easy to measure. Are you here? Are you here? Are you here? That was easy, right? And we all got to talk to each other at the water cooler. So what are the cons of that model? Pretty much everything. Not the best model anymore for us, not the way we are today. Not a lot of flexibility, not a lot of compassion. People were expected to be what I call work robots, which meant you show up at 8, you leave at 5, you never cry, you never have a problem, you never get sick. Yay, that's not really realistic anymore. Not how society has gone, not how we engage with our families, not how our expectations work anymore. I think that model was really predicated in the idea that one family member goes to work, another family member stays home and takes care of everything. That's died quite a bit, so we're not, but a lot of times we're still managing on that model. Why do you have to leave to go to your kid's softball game? Why are you upset at your desk? It's just not working for us anymore. A lot of, it was slow to grow. There were not a lot of options for people. It was work here or don't. That was pretty much your option. Show up every day or don't. It really tended to favor certain people that had the ability to do those things and were well suited in their personal and family lives to do that. And it really allowed you to be a really crappy manager because you could just hide in your little office and be like, I'm managing things, and no one would call you on it because you were there. Attendance counted for everything, then skills didn't count as much because you could just, get your fancy manager money and go home. What are we afraid of in changing that model? I think that's one of the biggest questions, because a lot of the resistance to this is very fear-based. I think we're worried our employees won't be engaged or productive. We're worried that they won't do the work, that they'll slack around, they'll go off, they're gonna watch TV all day, they're gonna do whatever we think they're gonna do because we can't see them doing their work. And we worry that they're not gonna be communicating with the team, the boss is not there to see them. And I really wanna say to a lot of people, are you communicating really well now with the person that's right in front of you? Because if you're not, that's why you're afraid. You're afraid because you're going to have to start managing people. You're afraid because you have to get your management skills in line in order to deal with this. And the reality is that workers that work from home generally report an increase in productivity. They report an increase in job satisfaction and often loyalty to the company. And loyalty is very much something that's changed quite a bit in definition. Different generations define loyalty differently. Like I mentioned, we still have 5 generations in the workplace. The tail end of the silent generation, which is over 76. The boomers, who are in their mid-50s to 76. That's one of the biggest generations we've had in a long time, hence the term boomers. The Gen Xers, like me, small generation, bunch of slackers. And we are 23 million fewer than the boomers. That's a big, big gap. That gap's starting to get filled in because the Gen Xers, we used to call them the millennials, the Gen Y we called them, now we're calling them millennials. They have about 77 million, so they've moved up the needle, but there's still a gap. That gap is being filled by the upcoming Gen Z kids who are oldest ones are in their early 20s, the youngest ones are around 7, 8. They're in the workplace now too. So you've got all these folks with different ideas of how ththings should work, different definitions of loyalty. Ask a boomer, 20 years, 30 years. Gen Xers are like 10. Millennials are like 4 or 5. Gen Z kids, 6 months, 7 months max. That's loyalty. You should promote me. What? You'd barely been here. That's what they're expecting. So you have all those different definitions clashing. And their definitions of respect are different too. I have a title. I've been here for 40 years. They're like, who cares? You're not very good at your job, so I don't care. So you're really looking at people trying to define things in different ways that are clashing with each other. So I think, one of the things that we want to think about is, what is the new world of work? This is a term that I got from Josh Burson. If people are familiar with him, probably not, because you're not HR nerds like me. But he is an HR thought leader, I guess we'd call him, somebody who had a consulting business. He really moved in with Deloitte and became comfortable with them. And it's not a new technology. I've been talking about this term since 2015, so that's not brand new. And it's really looking at the workplace and saying, how do we do the work? What matters to our employees? What do they care about? What do they want? What do they need? And it's really, culture matters the most to them. They want to work in a place that feels good, that is doing good, that is treating them properly, that is doing the right thing. That's super important to the younger workers and everybody. There's nobody that hey, let's work, you don't all work for tobacco companies. You're not worried about killing people. So I have a friend that's been in the tobacco industry for 30 years. I'm always like, how can you? What are you doing? But still, aside from that, the engagement's driven by that culture. Do I like working here? Do I feel treated well? I always talk to my clients about sort of the 4 pillars of welcomed, valued, prepared, and supported. If your employees do not feel all those things, they're gonna leave you in a minute, especially in an environment like this where everybody's hiring, there's money on the table, they know that they have options. You've got to treat them right, and not just because you wanna keep them, because it's the right thing to do. And the company has to have a conscience. They want to know that you're doing good in the community. A lot of you can demonstrate that pretty easily because of the nature of what you do. You're spreading information, you're educating, you're sharing. Good, check. We've got that part checked off. They want to have flexibility. They want to have growth. They don't want to just sit there and stagnate forever. And they're going to leave you if they don't feel like those things are happening. There's just so much more of a freedom of motion. No one expects to stay anywhere 20 years anymore. They're not even thinking about that. And I think one of the things one of the reasons I bring generation into it is because one of the reasons the younger generations are so flexible is they watch their boomer parents work themselves to the grave and then still get laid off in their 50s or 60s and get completely screwed and feel like, oh my God, there's no connection between work and reward anymore. And they're not buying it. They're not buying it. And you can't keep trying to sell it to them. You cannot. You got to stop trying to sell that to them because they're not seeing it. This is definitely much more, the modern workers are much more work to live rather than live to work. The work is not their identity anymore in the same way. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, on my day job, I'm a lawyer, and then I'm also this cool blogger, and I blog about hats and tomatoes, and whatever they're into, that's their identity. The work is not. And so trying to make that work as important as it used to be, it's a hard sell. So if you want to do that, you're really going to have to be great employers. You want to be an employer of choice, is what I always say. It's not just like, oh, someone stumbled in here and they had a pulse and we hired them, or like, oh, I came to work here because you had a job. You want people to come to work for you because you have an employer brand that appeals to them. I want to work there. It's great. It's fun. I'm doing something awesome. You have to build that in addition to your public brand. You got to build an employer brand. Couple things. Work is increasingly coming out of the office. Teams are everywhere. Organizations are doing good out in the community, and it's not just for their shareholders. People want to be on the go. And the nature of the work you do, people have always had some on the go, right? You're filming something, you're in a space, you're going to events. So there's always been some of that. So you're not having to battle that so much because people always had some of that, but you definitely are now having to battle people wanting to work at home all the time when you're like, yeah, so the mixing board's here, you can't do that at home. Expecting the shift, it really accelerated so much in the pandemic, obviously. We all saw it coming. We were all kind of scratching our heads saying, how do we change this? And then overnight it was we have to. We have zero choice. This has to change. So we didn't always make the most strategic changes, but we did think about, a lot of us thought about this before, and then we're sort of thrust into it because we had to. We really need to imagine a lot about the workplace, reimagine a lot. Everything's going to change. So, what needs to change? Everything. Employees are the consumers of the workplace experience. If that's the only thing you take away from today, may that be it. I'm happy to send anyone the presentation if they want it, or I'll send it to you and you can send it out. But people are looking at the workplace when they're coming to choose your work. They're looking at it the same way they look at a hotel on, TripAdvisor. Does it have breakfast? Does it have a pool? Does it have, is it close to my attractions? Do I like it? Is it nice? Is it clean? They're looking at your workplace the same day. Check, check, check. What do we have there? Good culture, benefits, time off, all the things people want. And if they're not seeing those things, they're not going to come to work for you. And especially that culture piece. Everyone turns over every few months and it sucks and people get yelled at boo. That's not going to work. Not anymore. It used to, back in the work robot days, because you didn't have a lot of choices and you expected to be abused, but people are not having it. And you can't keep that going. As I said, everything needs to change. How we work has to be a lot more productivity-based. We got to be cross-training people. We are not expecting them to stay for 10 years, 20 years. So with that in mind, people will leave. There will be gaps. How do I plan for that? How do I train for that? Lots of cross-training to make sure if someone steps out, it doesn't crush your organization. People need to learn each other's jobs. They need to learn about anything they can, anything you will teach them, anything they want to learn. And that's one of the things I often ask people. I don't like those questions like, where do you want to be in 5 years? I don't know, it's a pandemic, like not dead. Let's start there, right? So where do I want to be in 5 years? Not a great question. How about what do you want to learn? Where do you want to grow? What experiences do you want to have? Is it your goal to come to this conference next year? What do people want? And find that out from them rather than asking them like where they're going to be. No one knows where they're going to be. They're just hoping to like make it. Job descriptions are really important because you're going to count for the intangibles as well as the tangibles. Most job descriptions are like a laundry list of like on Tuesday you turn on this report and Friday you do this, but account for the teamwork, account for the attitude. I need you to have a good attitude. I need you to have positive respect for one another. Those are the things where people fail the most. I rarely ever get called in because someone's not pressing the right button. I get called in because they're a jerk, because they refuse to share information, because they're hoarding things, or they're a horrible manager. Get that in your job descriptions. So we expect you to be respectful. We expect you to be, if you're representing the station in the community, you cannot be a jerk. Like, that's just part of our deal. Like, you've got to be, I'm not saying you have to be like a weird Pollyanna, like, oh my God, hey guys, like all the time, but don't be fake, just not be a jerk. And I think that's got to be in your job descriptions, like, because that's the through line that you see in your hiring, your performance management, your issues. Like, it always goes back to what are you supposed to be doing. Okay. Oh, there's a Don't Be a Jerk song? I will learn it and sing it for you next time. You're welcome. Hire an attitude, train the rest. I always say that. I mean, obviously, if you need someone that has a certain technical experience that they don't have, okay, I'm going to fall over during this presentation. That's going to entertain you a lot. That's going to be great. Obviously, you still need to hire for certain technical experiences, but really, as people are coming in, if they have a great attitude and they want to learn, that's so much better than the person who's like, I know everything. Oh my God, I did that at my last 10 stations. You don't need to tell me anything. Like, I do not need that person. I do not need that person who knows everything, who's not going to learn, who's not going to listen, who's not going to respect other people. They're obnoxious and they bring the workplace down. And let them go somewhere else. Your orientation has to be really robust and complete. Someone shows up and you're like, here's a computer, read the handbook, bye. That's not orientation. They don't feel that welcome we talked about. Welcomed, valued, prepared, supported. Those are 4 legs of a table, right? You take out one, it wobbles. You take out 2, it falls over. Like, you cannot afford not to be thinking about those things. So welcome is a big piece of it. People often remember, I read an article how people remember those first 2 days of their work experience, and they'll hold on to it. So when they leave you in 2 years and like, they never liked me, those first 2 days were terrible, like, they hold on to that. It's in their minds. So you've got to make that better. You've got to really kind of sell them on, Medfield TV 101. What are we doing here? What's our mission? What's our vision? If you don't know that, they're certainly not going to know it. Performance management cycles, faster. More usable information. If anybody has a performance management form that's more than 2 pages long, please burn it now. Please take it outside and put s'mores over it and burn it. It's a waste of your time. You really want to do performance that's really meaningful for people. And I think for me, a lot of it boils down to what I call start, stop, keep. What should I start doing? What should I stop doing? What should I keep doing? That's it. That is it. You do not need to give people 75 ratings on their whatever. I've seen so many reviews where I'm like, there's a million check boxes, and none of that means anything to me. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to know where I can grow. I want to know if there's anything I should be doing differently. That's what I want to know. That's actionable, usable information, and if you're not asking that or giving that to people, it's useless. Don't bother. Certainly more training. You're going to have to invest in training. Bigger organizations are really going to need to have a whole training person, honestly, somebody who's out there cross-training people, somebody who is, maybe overseeing that orientation. They're doing annual training, they're tracking training. This is a great place for your retirees. If you have folks that are they're kind of starting to think about getting out, bring them back in as a trainer. Don't lose that wonderful knowledge. When we talked about the boomers starting to leave the workplace, a lot of them are not. partly because they're very relevant still. A lot of them have kept up with technology. They don't feel old. I look at my parents in their mid-70s. They don't look old. They're not old people. They're still ready to work and do stuff. So take those folks, and as they're starting to think about sunsetting, training is a great place. Capture that knowledge. Promotions, more frequent, more half steps. You're going to have to think about, if your job steps are 2 years apart, no, too far. You're probably going to have to drop them down a little bit, half steps, junior something or other, or get rid of your titles altogether. That's a big one. People are like, oh God, how would I function? You'd be fine. You'd be surprised. We'll talk about that later. When I was kind of looking through this, because as I said, I've been working from home forever, and I've been talking about it forever, but I realized I kind of didn't know where the term telecommuting came from, which is so funny. It makes you feel like you remember you just all on your telephone with the big wire attached to the wall, like this is your job. Like, that's not, I don't know, it's such an old word, and it is. It turns out to be coined in 1972, which is well before what I would have thought people were telecommuting. And we actually found some of the engineering companies that worked with the government started flex time in the 60s. And it wasn't necessarily different shifts. It was just, hey, flexibility to work different times, different places, different spaces based on their engineering needs. So it's not brand new. And it was really in the 70s, and in the early 80s, it was really starting to bring, people were talking about saving the environment, saving pollution, all the things we're still worrying about now, urban sprawl, air pollution. And so the idea of people being home or not coming into one set workplace began to gain some traction. By the early 90s and then into the mid 90s, the internet got much more reliable, computers got much more cheaper, and really the technology has pushed this forward. I mean, cell phones themselves, particularly, you don't have to be tied to that phone on the wall anymore. You can be anywhere. You can be on a plane, you could be here, you can be doing anything, and you're still able to work. That really makes a big difference, and the ability to do this kind of work. Some companies adopted faster than others. Some are still really stuck on, no, you must all be here in our brick and mortar facility. And some, really embraced it. And we're definitely seeing, post-pandemic, a lot of companies are like, we're not going back. You all work from home now. Goodbye. I've seen that with some of the big companies, ABC, Google, like the one, Facebook, all those. A lot of them have said to their employees, permanent work from home, see you later. But some companies then, particularly in the 2000s, were kind of jumping on the bandwagon without having thought about it. And then they started pulling back. I think a lot of us maybe remember Yahoo pulling people back in, and it was such a stink. They're like, oh, how dare they? People change their whole lives and their whole structure. It's probably because they hadn't thought about the fact that those creative groups they were dealing with were really struggling. So I think I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, like how do you decide if you can work from home? I think as we've seen, there's so many accelerations to our ability to work anywhere. So now that we have all the video sharing software, which has its ups and downs, certainly, I think for me, one of the things I lose most is body language. Everyone's just looking at me and smiling, and we all wave to each other at the end. I wouldn't do that in a meeting. I wouldn't be like, bye, bye. But somehow on Zoom, I have to wave to everybody. That's so weird, right? I lose the body language. If I say something and someone sharply looks at the person next to them, I'm like, oh, what's that about? I lose all that, And if you're not super sophisticated and picking up body language and face cues, then fine, you're not missing anything. You're doing fine. For the rest of us, that there's definitely a loss there. There's some loss of spontaneity, certainly. But we have all these channels from remote communications, we have cloud-based computing, we have all these things, project management apps and software, we can all track our projects together, even voice-to-text software. I mean, I do a lot of voice-to-text. I'll just be in the car, just creating memos and emails and stuff that I can send later when I've stopped and edited them for my weird spelling. But being on the go, there's so many more ways to work on the go, which I don't know, maybe that's a bad thing, maybe it's a good thing. I'm not here to decide that. But outsourcing and out-tasking, there's so many things that can be done by other people or elsewhere. Who's using something new that they hadn't used before the pandemic? What are you using? Calendly. Yeah, there you go. Setting appointments with each other. I don't ever want to use that. I don't want people putting things on my calendar. I'm like, please go away. Yep. Yeah. You can keep some of the spontaneity in your conversations and keep connected with each other. Who else? Say that again? WeTransfer, what did that one do? Oh, right. Yeah, that's so nice. That's so much nicer. Anyone else? Yeah?
We're using Trello.
Oh, Trello, yeah.
Where we develop teams.
Yep.
And, they're communicating with everybody. I get a hook.
Do you find people are engaging with it?
It took a long time.
Yeah.
It took a little while to get them going, but I think that it ended up.
Yeah. It took a while. I see that. I have a couple clients that kind of pulled me into their Trello, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want this. Right. Right. Once you get the hold of it, it really feels much more natural. Anyone else that I missed? All right. So let's talk about what jobs can be done remotely. So you've made that nice job description, right? So we're going to take that nice job description that we have, and we're going to look and see if the job can be done remotely. It's not about the person. I think everyone often thinks, well, can so-and-so work at home? Like, nope. Let's talk about the job first. Because if the job can work at home and the person can't, then we're going to have a challenge dealing with that. But we always have to figure out the job. Because if the job can't work at home, then no person in it is going to be good. Really having, do you have good access to the platforms? Do you have a dedicated workspace? That's a hard one. Not everybody has the ability to just set up a certain dedicated area. And if that lack of workspace leads them to be challenged by this kind of thing, that may not be a good fit for them. The job has to have a low reliance on company technology that's in a certain space. Like if you have this one big piece of technology that's here and cannot be taken to your house, and that's what you work on all the time, you probably can't make that job remote. You can't have a lot of requirement for people to be in the space a lot, because again, if that's the requirement, probably not a remote job. Productivity measurement, you cannot have attendance-based measurement anymore, get rid of that. I mean, certainly attendance is important in terms of being where you're supposed to be when you were supposed to be there. But beyond that, are you at your desk for every single minute of the day? Stop monitoring people that way. It's not going to work. They're going to want to work remotely for individually wise. People don't want to. I've talked to a lot of people in the last few years who are like, I hate this. I'm like, what? Really? Hate it. And if they don't like it, they're not going to succeed in the job. Even if the job is really well set up for them to be remote, they're not going to like it. And then also any contractual obligations you guys have with different organizations, spaces, towns, whatever. If you're required to be at certain things all the time, that person's going to have to be there, to meet your contractual obligations. Yeah.
It's not always the job.
Yep.
I have individuals with doctor's notes that tell me they can't come into the office.
Really?
Yes.
Individuals with doctor's notes that say they can't come to the office.
That makes them susceptible to. So now what I've got to do is I've got to gear their position.
Yeah.
To be able to be done remote. I can't say, oh, well, you can't come in. Oh, what can you do?
You can, under ADA, you can.
You've got a doctor that has said this person cannot work.
Right, but under ADA, you have to enter an interactive process, and if you determine that you can't make that accommodation, you can't. We can talk about that later. Okay. You're not hamstrung by just someone's doctor said. There's opportunities for you to say, this isn't going to work for us, especially if anything, quick ADA lesson, if it's going to be a problem for your quality or productivity, then you do not have to make that accommodation. Go ahead, question back here.
Yeah, just like a show of hands in the room, does anybody have a work from home policy or kind of?
Who's got a work from home policy that's written down? 1, 2, I would do that. That is a great point. I love to have that policy that it makes clear statements about, and you also want to be able to say, which should go without saying, but doesn't, we can yank this from you if we have to, if it's not working. Again, it's not quality. If you're not doing quality, you're not doing productivity, someone else is having to take over your job, you do not have to do that. You're not required to make that accommodation at all. Even if somebody says they have a disability that requires them to work from home, if someone else has to then come do part of their job, you don't have to do that. Great point, though. A lot of people don't have policies about things, and I know everyone's like, oh God, I have to write this down. It all sounds so big brother punitive, but part of your setting expectations is putting things in writing so people can understand your expectations, and then when you're managing to that, it's clear. It's not like, well, nobody told me. That's always my favorite. Nobody told me. Well, you signed the handbook, and that's where we told you, and you signed this, and that's where we told you. I told you 10 times, and we had 5 different meetings, so I don't know about nobody. It's a little loose. Jobs that can't be done remotely, any job that relies really heavily on a company technology that's in your space, can't be transferred, can't be moved, has to be with you. If you're really measuring face time or key meetings as a success indicator, if you're saying you must meet with 75 clients per week, you must do whatever, can't make that a home one either. Any job that's really focused on attending events, meetings, or other in-person experiences, it's going to be a real struggle to make that work from home. They might be able to do some tasks from home sometimes, but if the bulk of the job requires attendance somewhere that is not their house, not going to work from home. So I was just thinking these probably would be the kind of areas where you'd really be pretty iffy on whether that person could work from home. They might be able to do some editing, they might be able to do some work, but in general, they're going to have to be out all the time, and that's going to be part of that expectation of their job. What other jobs do you guys feel like you're struggling to figure out if they can work from home? Who's questioning? No? Okay, good. You all know what you're doing. Great. You don't need me. Hybrid work is going to be that mix of in-office and at home, and that's really popular right now. A lot of folks have gone to hybrid, so they're asking people to be in the office for a certain amount of time, and then they're at home the rest of the time. Usually that's divided up either by time or by day. So either it's like, hey, you're coming in every morning and you go home after lunch, or you're here 3 days a week and 2 days at home. I'm seeing 3 and 2 is a pretty popular one, and it always was for people that were doing work from home even before the pandemic. That Wednesday, that swing day, is always a popular day to have everybody in the office. A lot of meetings on Wednesdays. Because, at the end of the day, let's be honest, no one's paying attention on Monday, no one's paying attention on Friday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are your bulk work days of the week. That's how I see it from all these years of watching people. Like, no one's doing anything the first and the last of the week, right in the middle. I never do any training on Monday or Friday. No one's listening to me in any way, actually. Here we are on Friday. Sorry. But yeah, so you really, a lot of times people find that split is where they do that. And then you're going to really have to look at the job. So we talked about making that nice job description. Go through with like a marker, literally, and highlight, or on your computer with the highlighter, what tasks I think I can do from home, what I definitely can't. And see how that falls. Look at the color, if you can color code it, and see how that falls. If it falls much more into can't, then that job probably isn't going to make a good remote job. If it falls much more into can, probably a better choice for remote work. Or at least organizing the job that way. 3 days you're going to do these things, 2 days you're going to do these things. I think a lot of times people will do their administrative work on the Fridays. Thursdays and Fridays they're home, and they'll do the meetings and all the FaceTime things those first few days, and then those quieter days are for catching up, putting things in your project system, all those tasks that you do that kind of take up time. You can put those in those home days. Creating a hybrid job structure, you really want to have an effective job description of the key components. As I said, just review the tasks, divide the work by type. Let the clients know. I think that's a big thing if you have clients or people that are constituents in any way that are expecting something from you. I will be here on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. A lot of people put it in their little signatures in the email, work here these days, home these days. We want to be careful about messaging because you want people to feel like you're not there for them. I think that's one of the biggest challenges is people want their clients to feel like it's seamless. So maybe you don't want to tell them what days you're home and what days you're not because you don't want them to know and worry that you're not available to them. So just be careful about messaging that so it comes out in a positive way. I'm able to handle these things for you on these days. I'll be handling these things for you on these days. You want to manage performance on those home days as well as the work days. And as I said earlier, a lot of people are nervous about this because they're going to have to grow some management skills. If you just kind of relied on, I see people all the time saying, oh, yes, I communicate great with my team, and then I talk to the team members and well, she says a lot of stuff and we overhear it and she thinks that's communication. Well, yeah, not so great. Or, we all things just kind of filter down to us eventually. That's not communication. So if your worry is that you're not going to be able to manage your team because you can't communicate with them, then you're probably not communicating with them in the picture, in the workplace as it is. Because if you're doing a great job already, what are you worried about? You shouldn't be that worried. You're just going to shift the mode of communication, but you're not going to feel like, oh my God, no one's going to know what's happening. You're going to continue to tell them. You really need to make sure they have that 360 access to all kinds of everything that you need for work. If there's anything major they can't access at home, it's going to be a struggle for them to be productive and creative as well. So if that's not available to them, again, consider more time in the office, less time at home. So the logistics of managing remotely, you really want to set those expectations frequently, clearly, consistently, and clearly. That's the other FCC. And I really want people to, you cannot over-communicate. I mean, you can be obnoxious, you can be weird about it, but you can't not, you can't say, well, I told you once 3 months ago and that was my form of communication. Nah. Average adult's got to hear something 7 times for it to stick. And you don't have to be like, Katie, 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 Katie. 7 times, good, just gonna remember it. But you do want to make sure you're reiterating. Obviously, if you have project software, that's a great place to continuously communicate about something. Hey, how are you doing on that project we talked about last week? Did you make the move that we talked about? Have you talked to these people? I love that kind of thing. Team meetings, at least once a week. If you're not doing team meeting at least once a week, you are not setting expectations with your team closely enough. And I'll die on that hill because things happen in a week. I mean, how many weeks have we been oh my God, Friday is a different day from Monday, where you're just I can't even believe that was the same week. We all are having that, where everything is just elevated and escalated. The amount of emails we get every year is exponential from previous years. It's not multiplicative, it's exponential. That's crazy. And so if you're not talking to your team on a frequent basis, especially the ones that aren't with you all the time, you're losing opportunities to be on the same page. Because the communication is not about me telling you what to do. It's about making sure we're all on the same page. What do we expect to be doing? Are we doing the thing we expect to be doing? What are the stumbling blocks to getting there? And for those people that are missing out on chances to share that with you, that's when you have someone saying 3 weeks later, oh, I never got hold of that guy, and now it's all screwed up. And you're like, what? You really want to have those frequent touch bases. It's not because you're trying to babysit people, because you want to know what's going on and you want them to know what you're doing. As a manager, transparency is a big piece of the puzzle. No surprises, no secrecy, no surprises. People are not psychic. If they were psychic, they probably wouldn't work for you. They'd have their own network. It'd be fine. However, they're not. They just don't know what you think in your head. And if you think you've told people, tell them again. I guarantee you haven't told them enough. And do daily touch bases with people that you feel like need that much more time from you. You have to assess each individual individually. And as a manager, that's one of the biggest challenges is to be like, okay, you need this, and you need this, and you need this. And to give people what they want, not what you want to give them, right? And that's a really difficult thing. People often say, here's my management style, and here's what I'm doing. And I say, well, what does that person want from you? If you don't know, find out. Find out. Do you want more access with me? Do you feel like you're fine? And you'll see. Some people will say, nope, I'm good. I'll touch base with you once a week. It's fine. Other people will be like, yes, I want to talk to you all the time. And it's not even generational. It's personal. Some people just like more touch base. Some people don't. But you want to find that out. You really want to figure out what people need from you. And I think we often think of leadership as a pyramid, right? And you're at the top of the pyramid, cascading your knowledge down to the people, adoring people below. But you're at the bottom of the pyramid. You got to flip that. You're holding them up. You're the source of their support, ideas, ability to cope. And if you aren't doing that for people, then you're not a good manager. You've got to figure out how to lift them up and help them succeed. And so if you're relying on them to just know stuff, you're not doing a good job. You also want to have some communication standards. That's something you want to set more formally when you do have a lot of people away from you, to say, how do we handle this? What gets emailed? What gets phone calls? Like, what's the level? I mean, obviously you can't pick out every single thing, but like emergencies, go here. Calls, issues with these clients, go here. Problems with our set, go here, whatever. So people have a good sense of where they communicate, because otherwise you get a bunch of random text messages from people who are like, OMG, our station's down. And that's like, what? That's an emergency. Also, don't use text messages for anything really serious. Please, dear God. It's just like my mother who's like, so-and-so died. I'm like, no, don't text me that. That's terrible. Set standards and be clear about what they are so people have a good chance to communicate in a way that's appropriate, that gets the right amount of attention to it. Your management style is going to need to adapt. You can't just babysit people anymore. You can't hope. Hope is not a strategy. You cannot hope that they're going to figure stuff out. You cannot hope they'll get better. They cannot hope they're going to understand your vision. You've got to communicate your vision frequently. I think our station is doing this in the community. I think our station should be doing this. Here's how we're going to get there. If they don't know that, I should be able to walk into any of your businesses and say to your employee, what are we doing here? And have them be like, Medfield TV is a leading blah, blah, blah. Instead of like, I don't know. I mean, I guess we're making some shows or whatever. Like, that's not the answer. And if they don't know what you're doing and what you think you're doing and what you want to be doing, you got to tell them again, like 10 more times, and make sure they're doing it. You really have to be creative. You got to focus on a productivity mindset over an attendance-based mindset. I don't care if you're not there on Tuesday at 4 because you did an amazing job on this thing that was due on Tuesday at 3. It's done. It was done on time, and timeliness is going to be a big piece of the puzzle, obviously, for a lot of you, because you got a show on Wednesday at 2. Like, you can't be like, I didn't get to it. Like, people are expecting that. You've got a contract with that viewer who's like, I'm ready for my show. So you have to do that. So I understand that you're going to have somewhat less flexibility than companies who are like, I just have to turn in this thing sometime, whenever I feel like it. There's no more what I feel like it, but you still want to be focused on productivity. If they're getting the work done, it's being done well, it's being done to your expectations, which you're setting clearly, then they're good. I don't care where they are. I don't care if they do it from Tahiti or from your basement. Don't put them in your basement, that's weird. Over-communicate, people are not psychic, as I said. You're going to do a lot more supporting and coaching versus managing and pushing. What I mean by that is asking people how they're doing. What do they need? What's going on? Providing guidance versus, you should do this, you should do that, you're not doing this. You're gonna spend a lot more time on what do you need? How are you feeling? What can I do to help you? What's the challenge? What's in the way? Is there anything I can do to, I think it's always something I like to ask people, like, what's in your way of achieving this? What's a stumbling block that we can move together? Because a lot of times, what's in someone's way is not something they can actually do something about. And a lot of times they're not going to want to tell you. Maybe you're in the way. That's a hard one. It's a really hard one, but it happens. Flexibility and empathy are going to be really super important here, obviously, because people need to feel, like I said, that they're not work robots. If you're treating people like they are your personal servants, you are doing it wrong. You've got to find a way to make people feel welcome, valued, prepared, supported, and understand their lives are their things. As probably Katie has heard before, I was pregnant with my son when my husband discovered he had cancer. Ooh, that's a fun one, right? That's a great time. He's fine. But, my business was really supportive. They gave me time. They checked in on me. They took things off my plate. Those are the things you got to do for people to keep them coming back to their business. You can't treat people like dirt because something's happened to them. And this whole COVID thing has been so hard because now that the state's taken away the paid sick time, extra paid sick time, the federal paid sick time is gone. People are like, well, I got an employee and they're sick, but they run out of sick time, and what do I do? And I was like, well, don't be a jerk, Don't fire them because they're out of sick time. Don't be calling them every 5 minutes being like, are you better yet? Are you better yet? Are you better yet? Treat them nicely. Do what you can, and if you have to throw them in a couple extra sick days, do it. Do it for everybody, but do it. There's just, what's the right thing to do should always be guiding you versus like, what does it say in our policy? If it's not right, it's not going to work. Doesn't matter. And removing all the obstacles and understanding challenges, because people are going to have, issues with their coworkers. They're going to have challenges in their lives. They're going to have, maybe you've got the world's worst city manager who doesn't want to let you come into city meetings anymore because they're a jerk. Like, you've got to smooth the road for people. You can't just let them go out in the wind, especially if they're out on their own, when they're not there to kind of tap you on the shoulder and you don't automatically know. You've got to say, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? What do you need? And constantly care about that versus just what they're doing for you. It's a little fun word cloud that I did from some survey work I'd done with what people want from their bosses. Just ask them, what do you want from your boss? What kind of behavior do you value most? And word cloud just pulls up the words that appear most frequently. Support is such a big one, right? Relaxed was a big one too, interestingly enough. Trust, openness, humor, fair, collaboration, all those words pop up. But the fact that support is like the biggest word that most people said tells you something about what people want from you as a leader. They want to feel like a human that's doing something valuable for the company, not just a cog in the wheel that's like, number 47, we'll replace you in a second. Yeah, if someone goes, you got to replace them, of course, but they don't want to feel like you're just ready to get rid of them every second. As a note towards the end, as we're getting close to our time, to give your workplace sticking power, we call it, people want to stay with you. The work's going to be meaningful. You've got to have great management. You've got to have a great environment, whether that's home or work. It's got to feel good. It can't feel punitive. It can't feel like you're over people's shoulders trying to catch them all the time. And that's one of the challenges of work from home, is people tend to then kind of knee-jerk be like, okay, I'm up your nose all the time because I can't see you. And that's a trust factor. You've got to be able to trust your employees. If you don't trust them, you got to build that trust before you start letting them out the door. Or you got to get rid of them if you really don't trust them. Like we'll talk about that some other time. But growth opportunities and that trust in leadership, they got to see you as a good person. They got to see you as someone they want to work for. Because people leave managers, not companies. They will leave if they don't feel good about you and how you're handling things. Other terms I just mentioned along the way, I just want to make sure I kind of clarified them. Flexible time, flex time is really when your hours are kind of being rearranged or changed. So it's not necessarily an alternate shift. It's just saying like, you come in 8 to 5, I come in 9 to 7, you come in 4 to 8, and it's just kind of a flexibility in your day as long as you're meeting the hours. Job sharing, I think I mentioned that along the way, so maybe I didn't. 2 or more people share a same job. They're doing the same work together. That can be a place where you have 2 part-timers that are both doing the same exact thing, so they're really job sharing. Holacracy is a whole other seminar, but it's really fun if you want to look into it. It's a concept of removing all titles, and you're organizing people on a project basis. We're doing this, I need you. We're doing this, I need you, and her. Now I'm doing this, I need you, her. Like, it's on a way to kind of mix and match people. It sounds loosey-goosey and crazy, but it's actually got a lot of rules. But it's something we're starting to see from a lot of companies that are saying, why do we need all these crazy titles? Why do we need all this structure? Let's just value people based on their skills and pull them in where their skills are needed, and then release them again and pull them back in where their skills are needed. Outsourcing means another company's doing your work. Out-tasking means another company's doing your work sometimes. So outsourcing is you're giving it away. So for some people, I'm their outsourced HR person, where they're saying, here, you do it. For some people, I'm out-tasked, where they're saying, oh, we got a person, but from time to time, we'll give you some stuff. And those are places to certainly consider as you build your business. Anybody who's not doing your core work can be a contractor. As soon as they're doing your core work, not a contractor, but anybody that you want to say, hey, can you do some of this for us? Can you do some of this for us to help us keep going? What questions do y'all have about anything I spoke about today in our last minute or so? Questions? Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. I feel like most remote workers, I want them to come in for a week or so I can get to know them. I don't want to start somebody fully remote unless they're in another state or country. And if they are, then you're going to do a lot. In that first few weeks, you're going to do a lot of meetings, a lot of Zooms where you're speaking to them frequently and you're really engaging with them frequently, which you should be doing anyways with your in-house hires. So you're really trying to just take that robust orientation program you have on the road. But I typically say, I'd like to have people that are going to be fully remote come in for their first few weeks so I really get to know them, because if there's some real concerning behavior, I may not want to keep them for too long. Because as long as you're at-will employers, you can boot people for any reason as long as it's not discriminatory. So I don't think you're going to be good at doing this, or you seem like a nut job, is an okay reason not to have someone then be remote that you don't trust. Other questions? Yes, sir.
If I could revisit the performance management part.
Yeah.
You use SMART goals.
Yep.
To kind of give the employees an opportunity to set their own.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, we open them up again to see how we did.
Right. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. Yeah, those are great goals.
And it's cool because they have a say in kind of what where they want to be.
Yeah. I love having your employees be part of your goal development. You shouldn't just drop it on them and be like, do these things. What do you let's build a goal together.
What's the percentage of that should we actually do?
In terms of goal setting? A good most of it. I'd say there's this, if he's asking what percentage of your review should be goal setting. A lot of it, most of it. I would typically rate people in a few areas or have, like I said, start, stop, keep, and then a bunch of goal setting. And you want to look at the last year's review and say, how do we do on those goals? And you're talking about it more than just once a year, but how are we doing those goals? What do we want to tackle this time? What's worked for you? What was hard to reach? And and a SMART goal is, like you said, you don't want to have a goal that's get better at leadership. That's just nothing. What does that mean? Doesn't mean. So I want to say something like, I want you to take over the staff meetings every other Tuesday. You should have an agenda for it, and I want to make sure that we'd have a debrief afterwards. That's a SMART goal. It's got specificity to it. It's realistic. I'm not asking you to do something crazy. Never ask someone to do something that's so far impossible, because then they'll just stop trusting you immediately. They'll just be like, they're setting me up to fail. Great point. Other questions? Yes.
Some employees who love the idea of doing a hybrid.
Yeah.
Would just rather be in the office.
Yeah.
I imagine you do both.
Yeah, of course.
But I almost feel like there's a perceived well, you're going to be home.
Us and them. Yeah.
You're not doing maybe what you should be doing.
Right.
How do you sort of bridge that gap if there is one?
That's a great question. If everyone heard it. So if you have people that want to be in the office all the time, and there's people that want to be at home, and if there starts to be a gap, you're going to avoid the us and them, because that can happen where they're just those people at home, what are they doing? They're not working hard like us. I'd probably start partnering people together. I'd partner a home worker with a worker on projects so that they can start to see each other's pressures and really come to understand the value of that model. But I definitely hear that. There were so many years in corporate I worked from home, and all my friends that worked in their businesses were all like, ugh, must be nice. And I was like, yeah, I sit at my desk 12 hours a day, never get up, and I forget to eat lunch half the time because no one comes by with lunch, no one brings me coffee, there's never cake. That's the worst part of working at home, there's never cake. Yes.
So I do want to know about how to turn back afterwards.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big issue, is that thinking, oh, those
Right.
I think that's the issue. And when you're talking about age divide, when we have staff members who are of a different age and the culture was you go in, this is what we do. It's hard to do this
Yeah.
hybrid and to get some to understand that just because we're home doesn't mean we're not working. Just because you're at work doesn't mean you are working.
Exactly. Right.
That's a big, that's a big hard thing for us.
Right.
To try to do and to figure out how to get everyone to understand this is our mission. Are we doing what we're supposed to do? Worry about yourself. And I feel
Right.
like that's what I do with my 6-year-olds, and I have to.
Adults are just large children, so just remember that adults are just large children. So you really, I mean, I think you could do a presentation like this where you can talk about what's changed, what are we worried about. I mean, really open it up in front of them and say, what are you worried about? Like, why do you worry about what he's doing at home? Like, what's your concern? And if they have a legit concern, like, since they started working at home, they're never on time for this, and it puts me in a bad position, then address that for sure. But like, try to crumble those perceptions by talking about, like, openly about why have we changed? What's changed? What's the value? What is it? What are our concerns? And like, ask those questions. Kind of put it right in front of them. Question.
Just for everybody else in the room, just a thought issue for all of us. So many times we something unexpected.
Yeah.
We get a call in the morning saying there's a surprise meeting at 3 o'clock.
Mm.
Well, that particular day, if we're doing these hybrids or
Right.
half the people are at home.
Right.
Can they make it in time?
Right.
To be able to do this or to come and get gear to go someplace? How do we balance that?
I think you have to start by setting the expectation that that could be a potential, right? So if you tell people you're at home and we'll never bug you, then they're going to get mad if you bug them. You say, okay, you're at home, but there's going to be these things. So what's your contingency plan for surprise meetings? Like, help them build a plan so that they have something. And you go, okay, we're activating contingency plan. We got to go. And also, I mean, try to avoid surprise meetings as much as possible because, like I said, no surprises is my mantra. I'm going to get that tattooed. My son yesterday told me I should get "work is boring" tattooed on my arm, and I was like, maybe I will. You can't tell me. He's 7. He likes things, but like, if the only other thing I would get tattooed is no surprises. No one wants to be surprised. Your manager doesn't want to be surprised. Your board of directors, your viewing audience doesn't want to be surprised. You don't want to be surprised. Your staff doesn't want to be surprised. So wherever you can say, I understand, and that's what I do. Like, people will call me at 9 o'clock on a Sunday and be like, oh my God, one of my employees just threw a knife, and like, I got to go run down to the restaurant with the police and like talk to them. Like, I get that. But meetings, try to make sure that they have the expectation. And then, if someone's really far out, then they're going to have to just hop on a Zoom or something. You're going to have to set the expectation with the meeting setters that, like, it's kind of setting both ways. The meeting setters are like, hey, we have to have a surprise meeting. And you're like, well, this is how it's going to work for us because you can't throw that in our faces. Like, that's not going to work with our model. Oh, yeah. Right. Right.
So we have that as well. And as Joe was saying, we have contingency. So born is divided by bridges. It's on that side it's you, and on this side it's me. That's literally my contingency.
That's true.
When it's like a surprise, additional something
Yeah.
comes up, and it's an agreement between myself and the other full-time employees that you're over there, I'm over here, if something comes up.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, plan as much as you can, but that's going to be hard. You're going to have to navigate that. That's going to be hard. I can't say that as like one set idea, but I think having as much of a plan as possible for like activate DEFCON 5, activate DEFCON 4, like whatever level you're at, like set those out. And if someone truly can't, then you have to know that in advance. If they're like, hey, I'm on vacation, I truly can't. If they haven't told you that in advance, then that's a problem. They need to like be responsible for having a backup if they can't do the plan that you've set out. Other questions? I think we're running out of time, but go ahead.
Where do you think the line is between slacking someone or just walking down to their office and telling them?
Oh my God. This is like, I will die on this hill. Like, get up and talk to people. Oh my God, I have so many clients who are they're all in an office, and they'll be emailing each other from office to office. Like, I could touch your office, and then they're getting into a fight over email, and I'm like, get up. Get your butt up and talk to them. Like, yes, I understand that we sometimes can't because we're in a meeting and I have to shoot you a Slack about, oh my God, they asked this question. Do you know the answer? But anything that you can physically, if you're physically able to, of course, disabilities aside, get up. And I would definitely really encourage people to like reduce that percentage of messages, emails, calls. If your email is going to take more than 3 or 4 back and forths to figure it out, call. And everyone hates calls. I mean, I hate calls, but like, we have to continue to have those connections, because otherwise you solve things so much faster. You're literally wasting time with your 85 back and forth emails. Like, don't waste time. And you'd be so much happier if you didn't have them. You got to clear them out. You got to store them. You got to triage them. Like, don't make me do that. I don't want to do that. But yeah, get up is my mantra. Get up if you can, of course. Other last questions? I think we have other people coming in for our next session. Final questions? Yes, that is me and Alex. Yes.
So we have a bunch of pretty flexible, like some people work this time, some people work that time.
Yeah.
Some people are home and need to be home because of external situations.
Sure.
But we've had a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
And I get it out, like creating culture as people are coming on, but there's a very clear disconnect with people wanting to, and yes, we have our meetings.
Right.
Touch base, but do you have any like tactile, like boom, 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 try these things to bring us together as a cohesive group?
Mm-hmm. Lots of trust falls. No trust falls, just kidding. I mean, I definitely would start with some in-person meetings, because that's where you build a lot of that connection. So try to bring everyone together, do something off-site maybe, but again, yeah, no trust falls. And like I was saying before, if people have disabilities, like I have clients who are like, oh, we're all gonna do a high ropes course. And I'm like, that sucks for people that can't do that. Like, that's not fair. So think about things that you can do, but try to build those in-person connections. And again, match people together, match people that aren't together. So someone at home has a partner that's in the office, and they're gonna work on things together, or they're gonna touch base with each other, like a buddy system almost. And kind of forcibly create that opportunity. If it starts to feel really artificial, yank it back. But I definitely try to meet with each other as much as possible. Have an identity, build an identity for your group, and have everybody kind of articulate how they fit in the picture. So, hey, we're the innovative group. My innovation is this. I bring this to the table. Like, have them connect with your mission as much as possible so they feel like they're on the same team. That's why I was talking about employer branding. Really having people feel like they're on a team. I work with some friends. I have some friends that I do some occasional consulting with that work for these big companies where they're all like, we are, whatever the name of the company is, like Company Corp. We are Company Corp. We're all Company Corpistas. We all love each other. And like a lot of that is based on creating that identity and having people really identify with it. So what do you bring to the table at this station? I am the, give everybody a nice nickname. I'm the fixer. I'm the finder. I'm the carer. I'm the party man. Like, be careful. Don't get discriminatory, please, dear God. Don't call people anything related on their age, race, height, name, like anything like that. But give people an identity. Like you're the person everyone goes to and they can't find stuff. You're the person who always knows about things, and give them that identity that pulls them into the culture. Last questions? Yeah.
Well, not a question, but I can tell you.
Yeah.
I recently, last November, did escape room down in
fun.
With my team, and that was like one of the best experiences because we actually broke up my staff, and so not only were we competing to finish this escape room, but we're trying to beat the other team in the other room, trying to do their escape room.
Right.
So it really, and I made us all draw numbers, so we work with our friends, kind of thing.
Okay.
Everybody gets their own little clique, and they work well with each. So everybody was working.
Yeah.
The whole group, and it was. I even experienced. I thought it was wonderful because you got to see people who normally sit back and let others do.
Right.
Were actually active in doing it. It was really great for team building because you watch everybody reinforce everybody else, especially with the
All right, I'm going to let you go because other people are coming. If you want to ask me questions, come on up before you go. I'll be here for a few more minutes. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here.